Kyiv frustrated as UN report says both sides violated human rights. Ukraine's foreign ministry expressed frustration at UN human rights monitors after they reported that both Kyiv and Moscow had committed rights violations against civilians and prisoners of war. Ukraine considers it unacceptable to place responsibility on the victim of aggression, the ministry said Friday in a statement. The UN monitoring mission in Ukraine said it had found proof of summary killings, sexual violence, and torture against prisoners of war and civilians, and that Russia had carried out the great majority of violations. The cruelty and large-scale impact on civilians that we have seen over the last year will continue unless both parties to the conflict ensure full compliance with international humanitarian law. Matilda Bogner, the head of the mission, said. Here's the latest on the war and its impact across the globe. Key developments. UN human rights monitors said the vast majority of the human rights violations they documented were committed by Russian forces. Russia committed 621 cases of enforced disappearances and arbitrary detentions of civilians, while Ukraine committed 91, they said. They also alleged that Russia was responsible for 109 cases of sexual violence and Ukraine for 24. Brutal treatment of prisoners of war is common on both sides, the mission said. Canada and the United States pledged to keep the torch of liberty burning brightly for Ukraine, President Biden said in an address to the Canadian Parliament in Ottawa on Friday. Biden said both nations had sent military hardware to Ukraine and imposed economic sanctions on Moscow, denying Russia critical inputs for its war machine. He also praised Canada for taking in Ukrainian refugees and for its strong and united commitment to NATO, along with the United States. 10,000 Ukrainian civilians, mostly the elderly and disabled, faced the brunt of living in the besieged eastern city of Bakhmut, the International Committee of the Red Cross said. Those who haven't fled fierce fighting live in very dire conditions, spending days facing intense shelling in underground shelters, said the ICRC spokesman Umar Khan, Reuters reported. All you see is people pushed to the very limits of their existence and survival and resilience. Global impact. U.S. prosecutors accused a Russian national of espionage and wire fraud, among other charges. Sergei Vladimirovich Cherkasov used a Brazilian alias to study at an unidentified American university in Washington, D.C., obtain a driver's license in Virginia, and make connections with persons of interest before unsuccessfully trying to get a job at the International Criminal Court in April 2022, prosecutors said. He was arrested in Brazil for fraud charges. China's peace proposals show it's not fully aligned with Russia, said the European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell. Beijing wanted to be a facilitator rather than a mediator, he said, but also expressed skepticism at China's 12-point plan, largely viewed as inadequate by the West. Borrell's comments follow a high-profile state visit to Moscow by China's President Xi Jinping. The focus on an economic rather than a military partnership showed there remained some limits to Moscow and Beijing's ties, he added. Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Sweden agreed to strengthen joint air defenses against Russia. The four countries' air forces will ultimately aim to operate as one by integrating command and control, conducting combined airspace surveillance and joint training, according to a news release. Charged with war crimes by the ICC, Putin must limit travel to avoid arrest, reports the Washington Post. Some 123 countries are parties to the UN treaty that underpins the International Criminal Court and are in theory obligated to detain him, making much of the globe off-limits to the Russian president. The Kremlin said Friday no decisions had been made on whether Putin would attend an August summit in South Africa, a country reportedly seeking legal advice on the matter.